You know, Chris, one thing I'm really proud of that I've done and proud of that you've done is in the old days, coaching was kind of a sign you were a loser. Someone that got an executive coach or a life coach or something, they must have a, quote, problem, and they must have issues. Well, what I love about the new world is really coaching has changed. And I see now coaching as a very positive, prestigious thing. It's a winner. You're a winner if you have a coach. And if you look at coaching, the people I coach are all CEOs or could be CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies. One thing I'm very proud of is my book, Triggers. 27 major CEOs endorsed that book. 27. CEO of the Year in the United States, #3 greatest leader in the world, president of the World Bank, CEO of Pfizer, CEO of Target, CEO of Best Buy, on and on and on. 27 major CEOs. What I'm really proud of is 30 years ago, almost no CEO would admit to having a coach. They'd be ashamed to have a coach. And today it's something that they're proud of. I've really worked hard on that, and I think you've worked hard on it. And in my job, I'm really coaching CEOs or potential CEOs of huge companies. In your job, you're coaching some of them. You're also coaching high potential leaders, though, at all levels. Yeah. And our coaches, stakeholder-centered coaching, coaching high potential leaders at all levels. Any thoughts on the importance of reinforcing coaching for winners and seeing this as a positive, not a negative process?
I think it's critical that organizations continue to do that. Now, often we'll work with a lot of companies who had the model, as you described before, where somebody was on a slippery banana peel, you try to bring in the clinical psychologist to turn them around, and it was all seen as a negative and very clandestine. And companies have articulated that they want to focus differently. Right. And when somebody says to me, it's going to take a long time to turn that around, and I say, well, could the opposite of that be true, and could you turn it around quickly? And they say, well, how would you do that? I said, can you think of somebody, let's say a vice president, that you see as great potential? Right. Great potential. Right. And you get a couple of who 80% of the company sees as high flyers. You know, everybody's on this, high potential list. Sure. I mean, I always say, show me the one that isn't. Right. And they're on it. And they get a coach. Right. And it's public, the way we do it. They're going to say, well, why'd he get a coach? Right. Say, well, we're going to invest in him. We want to shorten his learning curve. We want to help him get up there quicker. So you're turning it around from, instead of people saying, well, why do I need a coach? Right. To, why am I not getting a coach? Exactly. I had one guy several years ago, about 3 months into this, he said, I really like what I'm getting in this process. But he said, it kind of upsets me, that I was told that I had to get a coach. Right. And, I just behave the way this culture wants us to behave. And, right. So that kind of upsets me. And I said, well, okay, I can understand your point of view. I said, can I give you a different way to look at it? And he said, okay. I said, do you see yourself as a high potential here? Have you been told that? Yes. I said, I've been told the same thing. I said, they're investing a significant amount of money in you to help you move up, working with a coach. Would you agree with that? He said, yeah. I said, well, so
what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that? He said, you'll never hear that complaint cross my lips again. Well, so, you can turn things around if you position them correctly.
I totally agree, and I think it's very important for both the coaches that we train and coaches in general to really focus on helping successful leaders get better.
Yes.
Chris, when you get paid for results, bottom line is you have to have great people. And an important challenge that we have is client selection. And I've seen our process. We pick the right clients, it always works. Pick the wrong client, it never works, right? What are some of the criteria you look for to make sure that as a coach, you select great people?
That's such an important question for each coach to ask himself or herself. I've evolved over the 20 years I've been doing this. One of my early engagements, I took a bad engagement, and I was warned against it. But my ego was such at the time. I said, "Wow, you're talking to me," And I worked harder at that, and I refused the money at the end. Yeah. I looked, and it was minuscule. I said, "No, we say we don't get paid unless they improve, and this is minuscule, and I won't accept the money." That was probably right up there with the best learning experience I ever had. I said, don't do that again. Now, what I do today, right in the interview process, I tell people this process takes courage, discipline, humility, and I explain it. The courage to tell people what you're going to do, the discipline to follow an action plan, and the humility of, I'm not perfect and I can get better at this stuff. And I let people know that a lot of people aren't up to that. So
Right.
I challenge them, are you up to that? And then I say, I don't get paid unless you improve. And I have a reputation for dealing with difficult people. I think it's the New York City kid inside me. I've had the bully, the narcissists, and I'll tell them, I don't turn anybody down at the beginning. I haven't yet. But I tell them, if I get a sense that a month or 5 weeks into this, you're blowing smoke up my nose and you're not serious about this, I just walk.
Yeah.
No bill. And then wherever the chips fall, they fall.
Right.
People will say, he's a fool to do this. I'm not a big enough fool to work with you for a year if I don't think you're serious.
And I'm not going to get paid.
And I'm not going to get paid. I got a family to support, and I'm
Yes.
not interested in doing that.
That's right.
So I think it's a competitive advantage to be able to say that and look
Right.
somebody in the eye and do that.
Right.
So I tell coaches, don't take a bad engagement.
Right.
And what's the criteria for you? And tell people you'll walk.
Right.
And I got a lot of stories, 6 weeks into it where I'll confront somebody.
Yeah.
Let me share the story with you if I can. About 6 weeks into it with this executive, I call, and this individual was supposed to have done something, and he gets on the phone and he gives me all the reasons why he didn't do it. And I'm hearing him and haw. And my sense is he's looking for a way out of this. He doesn't really want to do it.
Sure.
And I think he thinks I'm going to try to talk him into it and tell him how important it is to do and everything else. And I go the opposite way. And I said, it sounds to me like this isn't a good time for you and you'd like
Right.
to bail out. And he said, yeah, well, it isn't. It's important. This and he gives me all the verbiage. And then he said, okay. I said, no problem. We'll handle that just fine. And I said, before we wrap this up, I want to thank you for something. And he said, really, what? And I said, if you remember when we interviewed, you asked me what I was working on.
Right.
And I said, what I was working on is trusting my instinct as much as my intelligence.
Right.
And picking assignments. And I said, I get too rational, and sometimes my gut's telling me
Right.
something, and I don't trust it.
Right.
And when we did this, my instinct was telling me that this wasn't something that you really wanted to do or had the
Right.
courage to go about this unique process. And I didn't trust it.
Yeah.
And, here I am 6 weeks later, and that's been reconfirmed. So I want to thank you. Now, very politely, I've just told him he doesn't have the courage, discipline to follow through. So he says to me, well, wait a minute. And he starts to backpedal. And I said, I'm not trusting my instinct if I do that.
Right.
And I said, well, here's what I'll do. Let's schedule a week from now, and if you've done all the things that we've talked to up till now,
Right.
you call me, and I'll see if I reconsider.
Right.
3 days later, his admin calls me and says, do you have 10 minutes? He's driving me crazy.
Right.
He gets on the phone. He says, let me tell you what I've done. Boom, 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 boom,
Right.
boom. I said, let's go to work.
Right.
I like at the beginning when somebody doesn't do what they said they were going to do that we agreed to do, because it's a
Reality check.
Let's have a little heart-to-heart here.
That's wonderful.
And that's, it takes a certain chutzpah New York City kid in me to say, do you want to do this or not?
That's great. I think that's a great example.